Wade
and Wade
reacts. We got another subscriber request to react to another video from Kakarot 197. This is some Gundam development history. Let's check it out.
The neutral nation of Orb had become known as a land of peace, but despite this nickname, her rulers were very well aware that in order to ensure this neutrality, a powerful military was needed. And once the capabilities of Zaft's mobile suits became painfully obvious to everyone, it was clear that Orb would need mobile suits herself to keep up. Despite the aforementioned neutrality, a top-secret joint effort to develop mobile suits was launched between the Earth Alliance and Morganrate, Orb's leading weapons manufacturer. For the Alliance, this offered a secretive place to develop their 5G weapons, and for Morganrate, it offered them the opportunity to copy as much as possible. And so they secretly began work on their own prototypes. This then resulted in 5 mostly identical Astray prototypes that were initially only distinguishable by their colors. Not only were they identical to themselves, but they also shared many features with their Alliance sister machines. Much of their frame was directly lifted from the X100 frame, and so was their beam technology. The only thing Morganrate was unable to copy was their phase shift armor that rendered them impervious to physical weapons. To counter this, the Astrays had less armor, and the armor that they did have was a special kind of foam metal compound. This then made the Astrays lighter and more maneuverable than their Alliance counterparts, a feature that would also carry over to their respective mass production units. Unfortunately for Orb, all 5 Astrays were stolen due to an unexpected Zaft attack on the colony that they were being produced at. But luckily for Orb, they didn't lose all of their data. At the same time, they were also developing a mass production version known as the M1 Astray on Earth, and these machines retained many of the features of the prototypes. Other than some visual changes to the armor, the biggest change was the hardwired boosters on the backpack. Whereas the prototypes had a hardpoint that was presumably meant for all kinds of backpacks had their development continued. However, one big problem that was also present on the Alliance machines remained, making the machine pilotable for naturals. This was at first partially solved by some behind-the-scenes action that allowed Erica Simmons, the main engineer of the M1, to get her hands on the data of one of the stolen prototype Astray units that was being piloted by a natural. But despite her best efforts and those of the test pilots, the M1 was still extremely difficult for natural pilots to handle. This all changed when they received help from Kira Yamato. To make a long story short, due to circumstances, the Alliance warship this coordinator was serving on had to flee into Orb to evade a Zaft pursuit force, and in exchange for supplies and repairs, he had to use his experience piloting the X-105 Strike to help perfect the operating system of the M1. And with its newly optimized operating system, the M1 Astray was the most powerful mass production unit of its time, and it was easily capable of holding its own against the later Guace, which was fielded by Zaft near the end of the war. As a testament to its performance, these machines were carried over into the Second Bloody Valentine War, where they were often seen with a new flight unit.
It's crazy how they keep coming up with new names. I guarantee they have a whole team coming up with new names for new mobile suits.
During the First Bloody Valentine War, a space-only version of the M1 was also developed, and was designated as the M1A Astray. The biggest differences were improved and additional thrusters, an additional fuel tank
because an F-22 in real life costs about $1 billion.
A simplified space-only leg structure that also greatly improved its mobility,
5 to 10 times
and a bigger V-fin that increased its communication abilities. In terms of weaponry, these units would often be seen with a sniper variant.
Then on top of the mobile suits, you have to develop the weaponry as well.
The M1As were mostly used by the Sahakus, one of Orb's 5 noble families, and the one that was also in control of Morganrate. As a result, most would be used to guard the Amenomi Hashira military satellite, a station that was under the Sahaku's control, and also served as the production facility of the M1 Ace. A handful also served with the 3 Ships Alliance and would be given exclusively to ace pilots such as Barry Ho. Despite the successful combat record of both the M1 and the M1A, they would not get a true successor unit. Instead, they were followed up by the transformable Murasame. While some parts still bear some resemblance, it was quite the departure from the M1. The unit featured two 12.5mm Sea-Wiz on the head and on each wing, two anti-air missiles on each front skirt, a high-energy beam cannon on its tail stabilizer, and a slightly upgraded version of the M1's beam saber. Although it did only have one versus the M1's two. Then for extra equipment, it of course had a beam rifle and a plethora of missiles that could be mounted onto the wings. Another strong point of the Murasame was that it also had atmospheric flight capabilities as a mobile suit. Still, despite all of these amazing features, the combat debut of these machines was less than stellar, as they would be routinely defeated during the hunt on the Zaf assault carrier Minerva. But as the war went on, Orb pilots seemed to have familiarized themselves with these high-performance machines and were able to get significantly higher performance out of them. This high performance became especially obvious with ace pilot Andrew Waldfeld behind the controls. Other than its striking golden color, this unit was identical to the regular Murasame. Throughout the war, two variants of the Murasame are known to have existed. The first one was a reconnaissance unit that was simply known as the Murasame Reconnaissance Type. The only difference with the regular Murasame was that the tail stabilizer had been replaced with a sensor radome. The second variant was a space-only version and was known as the Ootsukigata. While it retained the ability to transform into a mobile armor mode, its wings were now replaced with a sensor unit and a railgun. It also had extra thrusters and an upgraded fire control system that, in theory, with the help of the new sensor, could identify up to 128 targets and lock onto 32 of them, but in practice this would often be cut in half due to interference from the end jammers. But even with that, the machine was still an excellent artillery and sniper unit. And just as the Murasame replaced the M1 as the general machine, the Ootsukigata would replace the M1A in space. But supposedly it was also made to work in tandem with the M1A, which would suggest that these machines also served, or at least were planned to serve, during the Second Bloody Valentine War. And talking about the Astrays, Orb wasn't the only one making these units. Seeing that the invasion of Orb could not be averted, former leader Uzumi Narahata decided to pay the ultimate price and self-detonated himself along with all Morgan Raid facilities to prevent them from falling into enemy hands. This of course also meant that many engineers were now without a job. One of these was Yoon Se-fan, a gearhead who managed to evade the Alliance and found work with the Junk Guild. Other than her usual engineer work, she also set out to create a whole new mobile suit for them, the Raysta. Although maybe calling it a new mobile suit isn't exactly the correct term. You might have noticed that Raysta is an anagram of Astray. This machine was in fact made with about 40% M1 Astray parts.
This world is.
Why about 40%?
Their writing team has to be huge.
Well, that's because it was made mostly out of scavenged parts. Still, with the war raging on, there were probably more than enough wrecks to mass produce these machines and to sell them to people who wanted a mobile suit in a very similar way as one would sell a car. You had the base model, which looked a bit boring, but still had some cool features like hard points, legs that could transform to grab containers, and something rarely seen on military mobile suits, handlebars around the cockpit and on the cockpit hatch. And then you had various option parts to make your Astray, your Raysta, look cooler and more personalized.
I don't think that looks that cool,
though. Absolutely no one's surprise, one of the most popular options was the Gundam head pack. Other than looking cool, it also offered better sensors, so there was some use to this.
What that's for.
And talking about functionality, while people who bought these units were contractually forbidden from equipping them with weapons,
the design
these
is not
machines
just
were
to
still
make
completely
the mobile suits more aesthetically pleasing, to
weapons,
actually have a practical
something
use.
that the Junk Guild once had to do themselves when they came under attack from the Earth Alliance. Another Astray variant was also developed by the Junk Guild, but this time in cooperation with the DSSD Research Group. They were looking for a worker unit that could also serve as a combat unit in case of emergency, and the result was a civilian Astray DSSD Custom. The two most striking things about this unit were the visor, which served to protect the delicate sensors behind it from space debris, and its propulsion system. This was a combination of traditional thrusters and a new prototype electromechanical propulsion system that was later also used in the Stargazer Gundam. Although this combination granted it finer controls in addition to being less polluting, they didn't benefit the mobile suit in battle. But despite not being a combat mobile suit, it still packed enough of a punch to pose a threat if used in high enough numbers. Then once the DSSD's quota was met, the Junk Guild also began selling these to civilians, which again led to many customizations. The most famous one was probably Leon's Gray's Purple Astray, but as a mercenary he wanted something a bit more geared towards combat. So he changed many of the internal parts to more combat-suited ones. The two more obvious changes were a slightly different head with sensors that were better suited for sniping and a power receiving unit on the backpack.
That's dangerous, man. Your neighbor gets mad at you and pulls out a mobile suit. That would be crazy.
Beam system. This machine was inappropriately dubbed the Arms Astray PMC Custom.
That would be dangerous.
The DSSD Custom was also further developed by the Junk Guild themselves and resulted into the cheaper civilian Astray Junk Guild Custom. It was largely the same unit and would be manufactured on the same production line to keep costs to a minimum. The biggest difference seems to be the backpack that was copied from the Astray prototype that also has two beam sabers. And just as the aforementioned Raysta, this thing would also feature various option parts.
I wonder what the laws are pertaining to civilian
head option
mobile suits.
Now became more or less standardized.
Can you just get in one and walk down the street, or do you have to
dislike
operate
the
in a restricted
Customs
area?
visor head. So now the visor head and the chin bar became optional parts. Many other Astray prototype replica parts could also be bought as option parts. And while expensive, this was often a small price to pay for the pilots who wanted a more legit-looking machine.
What's the licensing like?
The machine's performance, though.
So
let's wrap up this video with the three most well-known modifications of the Junk Guild Custom. We've got the civilian Astray Zero Custom, which was modified to look like the blue frame and featured a metric shit ton of weapons,
practicality and mobility.
A genuine IWSP striker pack courtesy of Lucas O'Donnell.
You said put every weapon you can on my suit.
There was the Gundam Astray Violence Geist, which was piloted by an imposter of Lo Gul, the pilot of the Astray Red Frame. And yet the mostly black Violence Geist was nicknamed Fake Red because it had red lights installed on it. Just paint the damn thing red if you want to impersonate Lo. Our final machine then was the Turn Delta, modified by the man himself, Lo Gul. This thing was a combination of the Delta Astray and the Junk Guild Custom, resulting in quite a unique appearance. It got its name from the triangle-shaped Voiture Lumière system on its back, and the L in its model number stood for Lo. And to make things come full circle, this machine was later used to upgrade the first machine we talked about in this video, Lo's Gundam Astray Red Frame. This machine then became known as the Gundam Astray Red Frame Kai. And I almost forgot about yet another custom civilian Astray, the Mars Jacket. And rather than having replica parts, these parts came directly from the Gundam Astray Red Frame Mars Jacket. As a result, this unit not only looked like the real deal, but also performed like the real deal. And that is all for the development history of the M1 Astray.
Yeah, that was an interesting video to get some history behind. What is it? C? Is it Gundam C?
Yeah.
Red Frame, whichever one it is. It was good to get some history behind the suits. You know, see how they was made. I like that they credited some in-world engineers because I was asking people in the comments questions about that. Like, is there anybody responsible for creating mobile suits? And for the most part, it seems like it's just companies. But in this one, they gave us a few names of people that was like leading the development of suits.
Yeah, I enjoyed the history of these mobile suits as well. I liked that this creator, Kakarot 197, included the height and the weight of some of these mobile suits because I was asking about the specs. how much the suits weighed, how tall they were, and how much some of the suits cost. He didn't answer that question yet, but I'm still curious as to how much the military grade mobile suits costs and how much the civilian mobile suits cost, because I might want to get one of those myself. That does it for our reaction to this subscriber request. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section. Also, like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you'll never miss a video from Wade and Wade Reacts.
And we're out of here.
Peace.